we see the same thing happening. We see the students going out to protest around the same issues, and then we see excessive use of force by the authorities. And yesterday, very sadly, a civilian got caught up in the crossfire and, ended up dying. And I think that, it's just unacceptable that we repeat the same thing over and over again. And I think one of the challenges is the police are not very well skilled in dealing with protesters and crowds. And this is really strange given the fact that South Africa has got such an entrenched protest culture. But I feel that, we're dealing with lack of skills and lack of understanding on the best methodologies in how to keep crowds under control and deal with protest action.
Yes. Now, Amnesty International obviously has raised these concerns in the past as well. And we know there are standards, there are local standards, there are international standards. There are principles that actually govern the use of force and firearms by law enforcement officials. And just looking at South Africa, where are we? How do we actually compare to international standards, Shenilla?
Well, I think, we are not in compliance with international guidelines. And, we were, following the death of Collins Corsa last year, and even prior to that, we have reached out to the authorities, to the top level of authorities on numerous occasions, expressing our concern, but also saying that, Amnesty International has developed some guidelines around the use of force and under which conditions it should be allowed and how it should happen. And we offered to share this. We said that we would be willing to, even provide some training if needed. And of course, we've never been taken up on that offer. And I think, the first thing, the fact that we are still using rubber bullets is unacceptable. People think rubber bullets are harmless. They are not. They, as we've seen, they kill. They cause a huge amount of damage to the human body. And first and foremost, the police must stop using rubber bullets completely. Then, we ask ourselves, why aren't they using things like water cannons, things that are not going to leave long-term damage on the protesters? And yet, they go for the most extreme level of control, and one that results in death and injury often. So no, they are not in compliance, and they really do need to be held to account for that, because we cannot have the situation repeating year after year, protest after protest.
Shanila, the question is, who do we hold to account? Because at the end of the day, the buck stops somewhere, and the buck stops right at the top. And sometimes, and we've seen it in the past, and you mentioned the case last year as well, when we went into hard lockdown, and we had, we had the military involved, we had the police involved as well. And when one sees inflammatory statements being made right at the top level, and we've heard about, scop and donor tactics and all those type of things, and that's why I say the buck stops right at the top. And who do we hold accountable? Who is responsible when these type of statements are made? And then police obviously don't know how to show restraint. And then this is where the excessive use of force actually comes in.
Well, Inayat, I think that we have to first and foremost hold the president to account. At the end of the day, these people operate under him. And we as Amnesty, we hold the president and the state to account. And then secondly, definitely, the ministers, Minister Tele, all of these guys have to be held to account. I think what is really unacceptable is that when a situation like this happens, we have, and we actually are very glad that IPID was in there yesterday and collecting forensics. But what happens is that we have the lower level police officers who then get thrown to the wolves, when actually they are just following orders. They are being told what to do, they are doing it. And unless we hold the higher officials to account and basically hold them responsible for the death or the injury of any person in South Africa, we're not going to see change, because it's very easy to hold a lower constable or a lower ranking official to account and say, listen, this person didn't do it right. But why didn't they do it right? Did they have the skills? Did they know what they were supposed to do? Did they panic? Did they know, were they given orders to do this? At the end of the day, it's just unacceptable that we're not holding the top officials to account. I mean, we wrote to the president last year And it was then that the president then forwarded our letter to Bekitele, and since then we've been trying to get a meeting with him, which we haven't been successful in doing. But I mean, at the end of the day, my as Amnesty International, we say hold the top officials to account. They must not be let off the hook. When somebody dies or is injured in South Africa, it is under their watch. They need to be held to account.
Yes, Shenilla, and I think the key issue here is we don't seem to be learning because Marikana was a major issue in South Africa, and since Marikana, we've seen so many more cases at the end of the day, and in the absence of holding the people right at the top to account. This scenario seems to continue. It's going to be an ongoing scenario, and at some point in time, something is going to give. Because when one looks at what has happened at Wits, these are young people. These are people trying to make a life for themselves, looking ahead, a career. And we know what the issues are with regard to the reasons as to why they're protesting. But to be treated in this manner, what signal, what messages are we sending to young people? Do they have a future in this country?
Well, unfortunately, Inayat, now today we've got an announcement that the minister is going to, be making an announcement or having a press conference around the issue of NASFAS. Now, look, I mean, I think that it's, why do these things only start happening once there is trouble? Why aren't they dealing with these issues ahead of time? The students have year after year after year, they come to the streets. These are students that are disadvantaged, that are from poor communities. They cannot afford this education. Why are we not making provision and making sure? Where are these kids supposed to sleep? I mean, kids, they come from far out areas, and then we expect them to find their way. I mean, why are we not investing in the youth of our country, particularly the poor people, the kids that come from disadvantaged communities? Look, it's not and unfortunately, South Africa's inequality seems to hit us in the face constantly. It's not the kids that are going to private schools. It's not the kids that are, from the middle income, higher income type of families. It's the poor communities, which is the bulk of this country, that are being damaged. Every child has the right to an education in this country. And unfortunately, Inayat, the reality is that a child's experience of education in South Africa is still very much dependent on where they were born, how wealthy they are, and the color of their skin. So what we're seeing, I mean, we saw yesterday, all of those kids practically were Black children. And, and we know that inequality is massive. So there is no political will to tackle the education system in a way that gives our children a future. We're losing children to a poor education system and to the fact that, there is no quality education. And when kids are trying to access what is their basic right under the Constitution of South Africa, they get treated in this way. I mean, I watched on ENCA yesterday when the police in Nyalas were chasing these kids down Empire Road just to arrest one person. I mean, you're arresting one person, but actually it is the entire group of students that are demanding their rights. And now you're going to make a fall guy out of one person. And I think that's where the accountability structures break down. Why are you running after and attacking students? Why are you not fixing what is wrong and giving them the education that their constitution and their human rights demand?
Yes, just finally, while we're talking about fixing the situation and the lack of political will, Shenilla, and sometimes it actually begs the question as to what is the agenda, what is actually playing out in the background. Are we just happy with the fact that we are thriving amidst all this chaos and this carnage that we see around us?
But Inayat, who is thriving? That is a question we need to ask ourselves. When we're in a country where people are still using buckets, where they don't have water, where they don't have sanitation, where they are living in extreme poverty, then who exactly is thriving? So it's a small percentage of society that is thriving, but the majority of society are struggling. And I think that, unfortunately, the state has not taken the right decisions in order to fix what apartheid left us with. So instead, the decisions are taken. Let's take education, for example. They think that, yes, access is a great issue, is a good issue. And yes, children have access. But what is the good of access at schools when they don't have a quality education? When there are 60 people in a classroom, when 4 children share one textbook, what is the point of that? Because they're not going to leave with a quality education. So I think that the economic and social rights of people in South Africa have not been dealt with. And, and unfortunately, until that happens, Inayat, until the inequalities are dealt with, we are going to continue to be in a state of struggle, and we have to continue to fight for these rights.
Well, Shenilla, I must say, I appreciate your time with us this morning here on Salam Media on News and Views. And we'd love to engage a lot more. And I know there's a lot more you and I can be talking about on this particular subject. But for now, we wish you well. Please be safe and all the best to you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Inayat. Wa alaikum salam.
Shenilla Mohamed, Executive Director of Amnesty International, with us this morning.